Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Now, the bigger the project, the more likely it is to go over budget. And in this video, I want to explore why scale makes failure more likely. And I want to start with some famous examples of this. So let's start with the Sydney Opera House. Now that was planned at $7 million. It finished at over 100 million and it was more than 10 years late. Now, Denver International Airport baggage system, bit of a mouthful. Now that was planned at 109 million. Ended up costing over $500 million. Now the NHS National Programme for IT, that was planned at around £5 billion, ended up closer to £12 billion. It was actually largely scrapped. Now here we have different industries, we have different countries, but we have the same outcome. So let's take the Sydney Opera House. Now the foundations were not strong enough to actually take the weight of the building. The sail design for the roof was so revolutionary, but when it was built for a fixed budget, the technology to build it had not yet even been invented. In the end, the design and construction had to change halfway through, which is kind of one of the things you never want to do with big building projects. So the real question here is, did anyone truly stop and assess the risk to approve a fixed budget for a project where the technology to build this roof had actually not yet been invented? That's an interesting one. Now let's take a look at the Denver airport. You see, the terminal building was designed independently of this super technologically advanced baggage system. The architecture introduced for this building, tight corners, complex paths, great for the people in it. But the baggage system was designed more for kind of straight lines. And it couldn't cope with the building's shape and curves, so the bags started to jam, they constantly fell off. Now in this case, this was not a technology problem. This was a system engineering and communication problem. They designed the baggage system separately from the building, as if they were two separate projects. When they put them together, they didn't fit. Now let's take the NHS National Programme for IT. Now this was a visionary program, revolutionary. It was going to be paperless records, instant access to patient data, electronic prescriptions, online booking, connecting hundreds of hospitals, tens of thousands of clinics and doctors and nurses all together. But the program was split across multiple vendors, creating a lot of complexity between vendors and contracts. And the end users were barely involved until the actual rollout. And then when the system went live, it was barely fit for purpose and the clinics could barely use it. It seemed to be flawed in so many areas of stakeholder management and vendor management were key fundamental areas of weaknesses for this project that made it fundamentally, and in the end, pretty much fail. So let's stop for a second. You see, entire books and PhDs have been written on these failures. I'm not going to go into that level of detail because obviously there's so much you can talk about. But I just want to pick out just a few things and patterns that I think are interesting and something we can learn from. See, when we scale, I see three factors at work: amplification, complexity, and bias. You see, amplification, when a project scales, everything scales. It's not just the good things which you want to scale, but also the bad things, assumptions, small errors. Any sort of weakness becomes much bigger. Now, complexity, large projects stop behaving like machines we can understand, and they start behaving like ecosystems or complex adaptive systems. Outcomes emerge from interactions, not the plans, and no single person is in control. They become very difficult to predict if you're not understanding is turning into one. Now, bias, big projects take years, and humans are poor at reasoning over long time horizons. We systematically overestimate what we can control, and we underestimate how much it will change. Now, marketing knows this well. Think of one-click shopping or credit cards. We always think, okay, I can find a way to pay off the credit card later. So what do I see as some lessons here? You see, these projects, they didn't fail because they had anything really unique. They failed because scale amplifies human and organizational weaknesses. And scale can also create its own ecosystems, and that ecosystem can take time to understand or not even understood at all. So one of the conclusions that I came to studying these is you don't need special project processes. You just need to execute the ones you have much stronger and much more rigorously. And any deficiencies you have will be amplified probably a lot more than you think. And there's often a belief that more money and more time in a project means we can recover more easily. But as we have seen in these three examples that I give you, that's not always the best option or the best way to think. In fact, the bigger the project, the less margin you have for weaknesses, and the bigger the amplification of any weaknesses or deficiencies you have. So my takeaway from this is strong execution of fundamentals matter even more in the bigger projects rather than any special type of processes you might need. So I hope you enjoyed this short video and see you next time. Thanks for watching.